Welcome to the Born to Be Free Summit. Our guest today is Keri Daye. Keri is a certified life coach, healing and trauma coach. She's based in Vancouver Island, Canada. Keri, you have a long life passion for relationships, healing, personal growth, and psychology. You provide inspiration, support, resources, and coaching for healing unresolved trauma. You've worked through your own challenges, and now you're helping clients with anxiety and regulating the nervous system, attachment wounds, betrayal trauma, narcissistic abuse recovery, and painful relationships. Wow, that sounds really, really serious. Feeling safe in your body and your relationships begin with healing your nervous system. Wow. Well, that's a hard job you have. But, many people need it, and that's really awesome. And when you don't help people, you love to sing, and you're part of the worship team at your local church, and you're the mother of an amazing adult son. Welcome, Keri. It's so nice to have you. Really, my pleasure.
Thank you.
So, the interview title you gave for this is, you want to talk about the 3 core emotional needs. Like, for example, myself, I have no idea what that is. And maybe some of our viewers also don't. Would you like to explain a bit what this is? What is the 3 core emotional needs?
Yeah, so just to give a background, what brought me into this line of work, besides my calling to help people come to healing and wholeness, it all starts with our own intergenerational wounds, doesn't it? And so besides, that my mother had her own wounding and that things that affected her as a child and her relationships. She had 3 unwanted pregnancies by the time she was 21. And so when I was born, right after I was born, there was a post-birth complication. And so she had to be brought to the emergency. My dad had to take her to emergency. And so in doing that, he had to bring me to a strange neighbor's house. So I spent my first 8 weeks there. And so my mom was, with her own wounding and whatnot, was quite dysregulated and didn't have the ability to cope with children in a loving, nurturing way that a mother naturally does. And so when she brought me home from the hospital, she didn't understand, the effect that separation had on me. And so I cried a lot, and she had really difficult time, frustrated, dealing with that too. So then she had 3 marriages, unsuccessful, and 2 more children in her second. And yeah, so, it was those struggles that I went through later that forced me to, re-look at my healing journey, right?
Yeah.
So in those core emotional needs that weren't met, she, was more in survival mode, dealing with her 3 children and in a marriage that she wasn't happy in. And so she left my father overnight, actually took the 3 of us. So when I was 4, I never saw him again. I saw him again once, I think a year later, and then not again until I was 16. And then there's a whole lifetime of child events in between there that we don't have time to get into. But those unmet needs then transferred into what we know now as trauma. And trauma responses. So I had a lot of, issues to go from the gut, immune system, infertility, some insomnia, severe chronic panic attacks and anxiety and panic attacks for about 7 years through my early 20s. Yeah, and things like that. So, I was doing everything I could to try to deal with it, even though I was still living what I thought was a very healthy lifestyle. I ate well, I had fitness, I was reading the books and, doing the courses and all these things, but there was a missing piece and I did not understand and I was struggling. So I did the best I could and they had an effect. And so I remember my mom's story. She told, about the painful relationship she had with her mother. And as the years went by, she said, you know, Keri, you're doing some of the same things I did, you know, meeting and being attracting these unavailable men. And she saw the pain and the angst that I was going through, and trauma and more trauma. And so, yeah, I just kept trying to search and get answers and to get healing. And so there was just seemed to be always a missing piece. And then through a relationship actually that was with, little did I know, but turned out to be a narcissistic partner that I found out towards the end, and he got diagnosed. And so at the time, at the end, we were both in support groups, and that was what connected me to another whole world that opened up to me. So it started out in learning betrayal trauma, and I became a coach. But once I did that, the whole world of trauma opened up, and I just kept going and going and going. And there was just light bulbs, and all these things came together, and understanding, you know, what was going on with my life and why naturopaths or these other things weren't really healing the whole picture. I was still struggling in certain areas, and I would do well outside of a relationship. I would leave, get better, be happy. And I would swear, you know, okay, I'm never going to be attracted. I'm not going to be in that kind of relationship again. And then next thing you know, there would be another one. And so it was all the nervous system tied right back to my core wound. And, you know, because they were unwanted pregnancies, you know, they know now that in the womb, a child picks up on that. And so,
yeah, definitely.
Right. And so, yeah, I just remember always feeling a real deep sadness and unwanted anxiousness took on her stress. I remember my stomach always feeling really tight and in knots. And so, yeah, that brings us to these needs, right?
Wow, but thank you so much, Keri, for sharing that personal stories. I mean,
it all comes right back full circle.
Yeah, it's kind of hard sometimes to share those in public, and I really do appreciate that. And you know, you mentioned narcissistic. I've heard it, but maybe for some of us who don't really know what that is, just a little bit explain what a narcissistic person is.
Oh, a narcissistic person. Well, typically, you know, something happened to them. It's all wounding. It's all trauma.
Wounding, yeah.
So something happened in their early childhood, usually between the age of they're born and 5 years old, whether it was a severe abuse, or a lot of times, or sometimes it's not so much even abuse, it's more of being entitled, being spoiled. So they don't learn that area of time where you're supposed to learn empathy. And if you don't get it by the time you're 5, you've passed that stage, and you don't know how to empathize with people. And so this trait comes and take on, right? So, and it just transforms into all these other ways of coping for them, and they've lost who they really are. They can't connect to that. They can't connect to you. So it's really sad, actually.
Okay, so they lack of empathy. That's a word you say.
That's a big one. Yeah, that kind of manifests.
Okay. You know what? That reminds me of a book I had to read when I was in seminary, pastoral counseling class, and the title was, you know, hurt people. Yeah. And that's what happens, you know. And when I see that happening, I feel bad actually for them, because they try to compensate whatever is missing by doing some other things to other people who, you know, that hurt other people. But yeah, wow. So
well, they try to get what they don't have, which is kind of like a lost soul. So they're sucking it from someone else. They'll pick someone that they feel that has that empathy and passion and the ability to love, and then they feed off of them. Yeah. But what ultimately happens is, because that person's needs do not matter to them, it's all about their needs.
All about their need. Wow.
It's very, very damaging for the other person, and hugely stressful, right? So and a lot of times abusive.
But you know what's good in all of this is not the traumatizing things that happened to you when you were a child or growing up, but how God turns that to be a powerful testimony and use your wounds to bring healing to other people. So that's really glorious.
For sure.
Thank you for that. And okay, so what are these 3 core emotional needs?
Well, the core needs are safety, love, and boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are wants. These are needs.
Yeah.
And they're critical principle elements that we need to heal, you know, so we can't bypass them. And when we do that, we end up taking on strategies that create so much more suffering in our life, and sometimes much worse than what the trauma was. So what happens is, you know, as they say, as we know, trauma is not what happened to you, but what it did inside of you. The story you gave that about yourself and the world. It's powerful. So it's sad, again, I say it again, it's not what happens inside of us. What happens to us, it happens what is inside of us. Sorry. So, and we create a belief system in that moment, in that intense, devastating moment of trauma about who we are, and it changes the true us, you know? So we take on that belief system and then we act it out the rest of our life. It's
like the trauma defines us now. And therefore I have to act according to that trauma.
You know, in the womb, even in that first year, second year, by the time you're 5, 7 years old, those things are created, and then you're living from that space. Everything is filtered through that. So you've only got like 94%, actually 94% of your brain is coming from that place. And then all you have left is that 4% that you're trying to take your education and, you know, whatever you're hearing, but it's being filtered through all this other stuff. So if you believe, right, all these things and lies, like we've learned that we can't trust our mind. It lies to us.
And we cannot trust our feelings.
Well, yeah, no, but at the same time, we have to pay attention to them too.
No, we pay attention, but that's not us either. We have a choice.
No, it's the stuff coming up that needs to be looked at. It's the wounding. And so really, you know, people can judge and say, or we can judge ourselves, but I've really learned that everything we do, our whole life story, makes sense based on what happened to us.
Yeah. So from your story, yeah, you had a difficult time. That's the least I can say when you were growing up. So with regards to these 3 core emotional needs, how did you feel when you were growing up?
So this is what we have to look at, right? So safety, for instance, you know, when you were young, when you were a child, did you feel safe? Not just in your mind, but in your body. You know, were your caregivers regulated and able to help you regulate, right? So that's
what does it mean, regulate?
So regulate. So this is all about our nervous system. So when we get wound up or something's upsetting, you know, it depends on where we've come from and the stability we had in our home, whether we're able to handle it in a healthy way. So as you know, some people can be quite calm, and even though they may be upset, they can work through it. They can regulate their own self, their own emotions, their own nervous system, and then they can help their children, right? So something is happening, and it's going to upset the child too if they're all dysregulated and upset and they're screaming and they're, you know, that's the nervous system. So did you have that safety? Did you feel that when you were a child? And then there's, excuse me, the love. Did you feel loved and adored as a child? You know, important.
So cuddling and kissing, that's important.
You know, were they really interested in you when you came home from school? Like, and they really listened and understood, and they took, you know, interest in your life, in the things going on in your day. Did they hold you and embrace you tight, but not smothering? Did you, you know, that could happen too, right? Did you feel smothered? Or was it more of just an indifferent going through the motion of being held? But really, truly.
But you feel when someone loves you, when just pretend, you feel, you know.
You know when you're, when you're valued and you're important and they're everything. And so not perfect, but still those needs need to be met, right? Yeah. And then boundaries. So were there boundaries in the home? Were they consistent? So it has a lot to do with consistency. Otherwise that gives the child, you know, different messages. One day, mom and dad's being this way, or mom's, you know, disciplined, but then the next she's something else. And you can't trust what her emotion is going to be one moment to the next, right?
Okay. So more
And
like consistency in the way you do things at home.
Yeah. And many things, the way you feel loved, you feel loving, and next time it's, conditional, right?
Yeah, but
So
feeling loved also means that does not mean that we don't discipline the child.
No,
if we need to, we
no.
do.
So this is it.
That's part of love.
Yes, absolutely. And that's again comes back to, if a child doesn't get that and they're enabled and they're able to get away with whatever they want, they feel an entitlement, and that's when they cross over into narcissism, you see?
Yeah.
So it's very, very touchy area of giving those balances. So, where you're giving consistency, but not in a stern way that it was smothering and crushing you, but that you knew that, when it was bedtime or when you had to do certain things, that they were there to follow you through. But then, on a weekend, were they giving? Was there room? Was there spaciousness to, give you some space to, like, oh, it's Christmas, we'll stay up later tonight, let's have a snack, instead of going to bed. So it's that fun part of it too, and that brings safety as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, I see sometimes I read in the newspaper, on the news, on TV, like horrible stories about what the parents do to the kids. I'm like, other people do, but the parents, I don't get it. I mean, discipline, yes, but anyway, so that affects the child.
Yeah, and all of this that we're talking about, it's not about blame and shame. In fact, actually, the whole important thing about it is taking the shame and blame out of it, because you can't heal. It's working through that shame and letting go that you did your best you could. And if people acted a certain way, behaved a certain way, had patterns, there were reasons why. But we are all responsible now. What are we going to do with that? Right?
Exactly. But So and I suppose how do you feel now? I mean, that's what happened in the past, and you were, in a healing process, and how do you feel now?
It has been a huge process, and it hasn't been easy, definitely. It's about really facing that hard stuff, the big feelings, being able to sit with it, and then learning to reparent, and that's really, really important, but doesn't really come natural to us. We have to learn how to do that. We have to, get the support that we need. So I did surround myself, and I mean, this is my education, this is my work now. So I buried myself in it, and for me, it was amazing and miraculous. I just love it. It was able to bring the pieces together, but even in that, you still have to do your work, right? Yeah. So it's taking the time to make yourself a priority and giving yourself the needs that you weren't given. And that's a life process. It's something that you take on every day. It doesn't just like a one fix thing. Okay, I'll do this for a month and then I'm better. And you've got to think about it day after day, like a meal, breathing, eating, right? So
if I understand, you were saying it's important that we do things that we love. So, for example, me, I love massage, and I've said it already in one interview. And that's like, for me, my reward, and I have some shoulder back problem also. So it really helps. But you, what do you like to do? How do you love yourself?
Well, and this is it too, right? So, we've gone really briefly, because there's so much more to this that we can get into. And, and in working with me, you take that whole process and you break it all down. But some of the ways that you can, it's about creating new ways of being so that we don't have to rely on those strategies, because those strategies are creating immense suffering in our lives, in our families' lives, right? In our work, in our business. It carries out through everything in our health. So, it's recognizing, I think, starting with the how did I feel, bringing yourself back. What was my life like in these areas? And then how do I feel today? Are you regulated? Can you handle it? When you get overwhelmed and stressed out, can you regulate yourself without taking medication or, self-medicating, right? Drugs, alcohol. There's so many things that people do to compensate. So are you able to be loving to yourself and being careful of the critic? Or are you, beating yourself up, bullying yourself kind of thing? We do that too, right?
We do that, huh?
We're the hardest on
Wow.
ourselves, right?
And when we
push
do
ourselves
that,
around.
maybe we are not even aware that we are doing that, or we know.
No, I don't. It's unconscious. It's just a way. It's a pattern. The thoughts playing through your mind all day.
Wow.
And it doesn't have to be like, we push ourselves around, but it can be all levels, right? Sometimes it's just subtle. Other days it's pretty, intense. But when we don't have those needs met, we're going through life, like as a child, you're going to school and something comes up and you're with your friends and you're always comparing, you're always feeling like, I'm not enough. And you're looking at them and going, they're prettier, they're smarter, they're more confident, everybody's happy, and you're in your little head, in your little girl, and you're struggling and you're trying to put on this happy face and go through the motions, and it affects your schooling, right? Deep down, you don't want to be there. You want the world to stop and go deal with it, but you can't, right?
And sometimes I guess a child, depends on a parent to identify those type of issues. But as an adult, sometimes people pretend that they're fine, and then we put a mask, and when we go to our work, and then we go to church, and then we do our things, and we put a smile and happy face, and then we go home and we are miserable. But the lie of the enemy also is that you cannot tell anybody. It's so shameful. So keep it to yourself. And that's where someone is isolated, and then it's it's
about unlearning and being vulnerable enough and finding that safe place to come to tell your story. We all have a story, and that story needs to be seen and heard and have an empathetic witness to heal. And when you have that, you can begin to work slowly through all those things. Some things are too big. You can't just bang on go back to all these horrible, dramatic things that you went through. You take it slowly and you build capacity, and then you can create new brain pathways. It gets stuck there because we don't give it that space to look at those emotions, to embrace it, and to work through it, and to love it and accept it where it is, as it is now, because so many people think my emotions, we can't trust them, they're not safe, right? But it's the opposite. We need to
acknowledge.
We need to acknowledge. Absolutely. It's like, a little child's in front of you and something's happened. What are you going to do with that child? Are you going to tell them, it's nothing, go away? You're going to comfort them. You're going to, right?
Yeah.
You're going to pull them in, and you're going to give them a safe place and tell them they're loved. That's what we need to do for ourselves now. And people say, how do I do that? So it's a learning process.
It's a learning process. But it's important what you said. We need a safe place. You don't tell your issues to everybody.
Yeah. It's number one.
So you need to find, if you're listening and then you have this type of issues, you need to find a person that you can trust.
Yeah.
A professional, a coach, a therapist, or psychologist, or someone who has the competence also to help you, but it has to be safe. That's important, because like one speaker said, you don't go to get re-traumatized by your helper. You go get to be healed. So that's important. That's
what happens. You go to that place that you shouldn't be bringing it to, and you get re-traumatized, and you walk away, more confused, more upset, feeling bad that you even went there to talk, and so you push it down even further, right? It's really important to find that person. And a lot of times, or even if they're not, they're trying to comfort you, but they're telling you all the things that they think you need to hear, but they're actually not the things you need to hear, because they don't understand, right?
No.
They don't understand, and they don't have the elements and the knowledge to tell you what steps to take that are going to make a difference to get you on a healing journey.
But you know what? I've read that in 90% of the cases, people get better by you just listening to their story and not giving advice. Sometimes they don't need advice. They just need to talk, and someone who really cares to listen.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Yeah. but then a follow through, right?
Of course. No, but if you really need, if you have serious traumas, then you need a specialist, not just a friend, to help you, because they don't have the competence or the skills to help in this kind of problem. Yeah. But so what are some of the specific steps for meeting our core emotional needs? Are there like strategies that you can tell?
Yeah. So, so you basically have to find a way to get help and support to begin to regulate and reset your nervous system. So that's the safety again, and a safe place. Someone who's knowledgeable knows how to help you through that and create that for yourself. Creating an environment in your home that is safe. So, I mean, you may have to look at making changes. I don't know what that looks like, but what does that look like for you, right? Creating boundaries around yourself, friends, family. If you're working through some things, you may need to say, I need to create these boundaries. You may need to even take space from that relationship for a while to work on yourself, to heal. Sometimes you can't do it in relationship with certain people and family. And that's not easy, but
no,
very nice.
Especially with family members.
It's very, very complicated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complex. And then the loving, the reparenting. So what does that look like for you? Learning ways to be with that inner child and nurture and love yourself. There's so many things that we can do, right? But it's finding the support, and then taking 10 to 15 minutes every day to make space for creating that plan and following it through. So having the discipline to follow through with it, being there for yourself, showing up in these ways, helping your inner child to know that it can trust you, she can trust you, and speaking those things in. I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere. I love you more than anything. When those feelings are coming up, it's okay, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And so it's speaking that out, addressing and saying out loud, I feel stressed. Not pushing it down and barreling through your day, right? Taking time in your day to listen to your nervous system. What do I need right now? What is my body saying to me? Where do I feel it? What's coming up? Where does that come from? So there's so many levels, and it takes time, right? Being disciplined around getting to do the things that you need to do in a day. I need to get to bed early so that I can get up and, accomplish.
I need to hear that.
These goals tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And then it's about disciplines in a way that not pushing yourself, because I know I'm bad at that. It's like all these things to do, push through, right? Meanwhile, my nervous system or my mind and body are saying, I want to go play. I want to break. I want to take a nap. And so listening to that voice is taking care of us, right?
Yeah.
If you need a break, take the night off, go curl up on the couch, get your favorite snack and enjoy yourself. Get out in nature, go sing. It's just, there's whatever it is that you love to do.
Exactly.
Spend that time.
But not too much ice cream anyway, because otherwise we need to go work out after that.
Yeah.
But I'm really listening carefully with everything you say, because as you speak, I'm thinking, okay, do I provide a safe environment for my kids? Do I meet their core emotional needs? Do I take care of myself? I'm listening because I'm learning so many things from you.
Awesome.
And I trust that the viewers are also learning.
Awesome. Well, we get in our own patterns, right? And whatever was taught to us too, and that's normal, and it's not necessarily right. And it's not that it's what we've done is right or wrong. It's just our coping strategies and unlearning. So no shame, just got to let go of that. But it's just coming in now and embracing all of these things into your life, and it's so worth it. So worth it.
Yeah, because you still have greater things to do. If you're breathing, God is not done with you. You have greater things to do.
Yeah.
So
it's uncomfortable though, right? And acknowledge the reality that it's going to be uncomfortable. It is,
but it's needed.
It's needed.
It's
It's
needed.
okay. Accept that. It's hard. That's okay. But when you start working through it, and those capacities start to build, and the pathways in the brain start to reform, the amazingness and the beauty in that is just, it keeps propelling you forward. It's like, wow, I'll do that again, or I can do that again, because now you've convinced yourself. Before you couldn't, but now you can, right?
And even sometimes, like just crying makes me feel good. And I hate when people say to like little boys, don't cry like a little girl, that's really, really not good.
It's all old school.
Very
I mean, there's so much that's old school, certain phrases like, just let it go. It's done. Just move on.
Yeah.
All those things, that positive toxicity is literally actually just re-traumatizing you, for one. But it's not true, because you can't just let go of something that's not been dealt with or seen or validated or like these needs. You have to take the time to give them, because they will keep surfacing. You think, oh, I've moved on, I've dealt with it. Well, what are you doing? You're drinking, you're doing this, your marriages or whatever, your children are unhappy. The evidence is there. You can say what you want, but the body and your spirit, it's kept there, it's stuck there, and it knows, and it's trying to get your attention, and you are suppressing it, and you are abusing really your inner child, saying, no, you're not important, I'm not going to listen to you. So when you see it in that light, it's really sad what we can do to ourselves.
Yeah, it is. So so when someone has developmental trauma and abandonment wounds, what happens when others judge or criticize their hypervigilance behavior, or they abandon them again?
That is a huge one, and a very sensitive one for me. So, it comes right back to, so when you're in a situation with, like, say, a family member or a friend, your partner, and something's a problem, and something's happening, and the dispute or whatever argument, they're criticizing you, judging you, or calling it, what's the word, accusing you of something. What happens is you immediately go back into that core wound. Now, this isn't something that I can understand, like logically, we can't understand it. When you're going through it, you don't understand what's happening with me, but you were actually brought into a trigger response that is right back to your childhood wound. So you go into a hypervigilant mode, and you're trying to fix it, desperately trying to fix it, because you feel so unsafe and threatened in that moment. It's extremely overwhelming. And that if that person that you're with does not understand what's happening, or even cares to understand, and they're not there for you and meeting you in that moment, first of all, they're not a safe person. A safe person will always say, hey, I'm upset, but let's talk about this. And what's going on with you right now, right? Giving you time to say, hey, and share your voice, your heart, to hear your side to something. And when that doesn't happen, you literally do go into that hypervigilant mode. And it's re-traumatizing again. Wow. So that can be a pattern unless you do your healing work and you heal that wound and you get the awareness of what's actually been happening, and someone informs you that this is what's happening. That was a whole learning process that I didn't just know. I mean, I knew when things were coming up, but it was just a pattern that I didn't understand. It was just like, oh, there's that feeling again. What's happening? And so in therapy or whatever you're doing, that'll be explained, and then now you can go, oh my goodness, yes. So it's learning to regulate your nervous system. And that, again, that's a process. And then in that process, you have to make some decisions, create some boundaries. You have to learn that it's not about you, what's happening with them. It's not about the circumstances. It never is, right? Mm-hmm. It's about the deeper stuff, what's going on with that person on a deeper level, and me. And then letting it go. But you can only do that, again, with regulating the system. So it's a combination of all kinds of things happening, and really learning to go inward and saying, okay, you know what? I just have to accept this because I can only control me. I can't control them. If I've tried X, Y, Z and they're not listening, they're not there for me, I'm being betrayed, I'm being abandoned, then you have to find your own safe place, your people that you can talk to, your tribe or your safe place.
Yeah.
And then you build from there, right? And if those relationships come around, that's great, but it has to be, you know, both sides being willing and to embrace one another and to be forgiving and understand and loving, right?
It's a two-way. It's a two-way.
It is two-way. And honestly, that was something that was super hard for me. But once I learned what was happening, I could let go, and you will find peace. And that's the beauty of it. You know, it's never good. You're not going to like the situation.
So life after trauma is possible.
Yes.
Peace is possible. Joy is possible. Happiness. Sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
You are a living testimony of that.
Amen. I am.
So there is hope for you. If you're listening, you're watching, and you feel like I can relate to Keri, there is hope for you. There is hope. That's the good news. And that's the thing.
Absolutely.
Like,
it was for me.
You know, things happen to us, good and bad, but there's always hope. There's always hope. And that's I guess the, you know, wonderful things about this. So we tend to repeat the patterns of the things that we lived, right?
Yeah.
So what warning signs or advice can you give the viewers on, okay, you are, you know, about to repeat the pattern, so be careful. And then choose something else. Do something better. What can you tell them? How do they know? What are the signs and what should they do?
So you're relating to
like, for example, you meet a narcissistic person, you are attracted to, you know, this type of person, and maybe they're not even conscious about it, but there are signs like, okay, because I hear stories again and again of women who have partners who beat them up, and then they break up with that one, and then a couple of months later the same. I'm like, okay, it's not possible that all the men out there beat their partner. How come this woman always end up with someone who's beating her? It's like, and even looks like even the new person didn't behave like that before. But when this person got with the woman, starts beating her. I'm like, well, what's the thing? Can you explain, please, what happens?
Well, again, you know, there's all those layers, but it does come back to those needs met, not met. And the core wound, whatever that was, there's obviously things going on where their needs weren't met, they weren't seen, they weren't heard, they didn't feel valuable, they didn't feel loved. And so whatever's familiar with them, they're comfortable with. And that can be with or without abuse. It's hard to say, right? But they're comfortable, even though they think that's the last thing in the world I want. I am trying so desperately to do my work and find that healthy person. And they're sure they got it, but then but it's a comfortable place. It's actually the reality of it. But the more healing they do and the more awareness, the more they're able to, you know, prevent this from happening any further. But it is a journey. So I think, you know, what happens is when, say, for a narcissistic partner, they're typically very much love bombing you in the beginning, you know, just showering you with love, and you're just everything, and you're amazing, and it's really intense, and it's so, you know, and captivating. And
so isn't that a manipulation though?
It is, but you don't realize it is. They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
They don't, but for the person that's receiving this, it's so enticing that they think, oh, wow, they really think I'm amazing, you know? So if you're not used to getting that, you're going to be pulled in. You want that, right? This is what you've been wanting.
We all want that.
Absolutely. And so it feels so good. It's like a drug. And so you're blinded by, like, if a healthy person was given those things, you'd be going, why are you doing that? Like, you don't even barely know me.
I would be asking that question. Why are you doing this?
Why are you doing that? I don't think you really think that much of me. You don't barely know me. but see, the person that didn't get those needs met get blinded and they get wrapped up in that. And so that's one sign. That's a big sign in the beginning. And it feels good. And you don't even, you kind of block out even if you think there might be any red flags, right? You don't want to admit that. It's like, nah, it's fine. He just likes me. But if things start moving too quickly, yeah, you know, at a faster pace than normal, again, you're kind of going along with it because you're liking, right, what's happening. But then it starts to change, you know, you start seeing all these subtle things, but it's so subtle. It's like the frog in the boiling water, right? Before you know it, it's just, oh my goodness. I mean, I've always been a very aware person. I'm a bright person, and, you know, I have areas of my life that would be going well, but when it came to that, it was just, you know, it's like there's this unconscious part of you that really thinks this time it's tied to wanting it to work out with what happened, what didn't work with your parents or your mother. So you think this time, and it's kind of crazy because I didn't even see it, but there's a part, that little girl, this time it'll work. This time I will be seen. This time I will be loved. And so I learned that through actually a counseling session. And when she said it, I just was like stunned and went, wow, that was deep. But I knew it tied in, and I could feel that was, but it took me a moment to really process it. So in the situation, it's going to be all about them. Your needs don't matter. There will be a lot of gaslighting. They are unapproachable. You can't speak to them about something when you try to address anything that's your needs or your values or equality in the relationship. Doesn't matter what it is, you know, the simplest, just basic things, they are pushed away. They will not be met. It doesn't matter.
So the advice is get out.
Yeah, you basically, you know, you either put up and do it all their way because it's very controlling. If you try to press in, they can be, I don't know all, but some can become very volatile. And so, and again, they turn that on you, that that's your fault.
Yeah,
you brought this up, that
I'm talk too much. That's why I beat you up.
Yeah, so yeah, volatile. So yeah, it's very confusing. They're very, very defensive. You know, you can see the slightest little thing, or even, you know, thing that would come up, not criticism, but what's the word I'm looking for? Constructive criticism, and it would be blown out of proportion. Like something would be nothing for the other person typically, and the next thing you know, you're in this 2-hour conversation going around this mountain, and you have no idea what's going on. You're like, yeah, why are they so upset? Yeah. Right? So there's lots of things, and you'll start picking up on them. So it's that where you just have to really recognize there's something wrong here.
Mm-hmm. And this type of person, like narcissistic person, would they usually accept to go to therapy or no?
Mostly no. If they do go, it's a manipulation tactic. And when they get there, they're trying to manipulate the counselor or the therapist. It's your fault anyway. So it's never a good thing to do as a couple. I had that situation where we did go, and it wasn't good. You know, he was there long enough to get diagnosed, and then that was it. And in the end, it was basically, he did say, I'm going to try and go to the men's group and do these things. But when they're challenged to make that change, that's going to change their pathways, I believe that a narcissist can heal. The problem is they don't have the desire.
They don't have a desire. Why don't they have a desire? Because they think nothing is wrong with them?
Yeah, most don't. Some do. Some know. On a deep level, they know what they're doing is wrong. But I think it's because typically we are motivated by love, right? We want relationship. Whereas with them, they don't know how to love. So therefore, where's the motivation? And
so what's their motivation in all of this?
Huh?
What's the motivation? What's their motivation in getting into a relationship just to be?
It is basically just to meet their needs. You're a supply for them. They're a core supply to them to get their needs met, and that's it. That's it. So if you don't go along with that ride, you're done, and they're discarded, and they're on to the next one. So even that, they don't matter. It's like, okay, I'll find another one, and they will, like that.
Ooh.
As long as it's somebody that they think that they can manipulate and get their needs met, whether it's sexually, help them pay the bills, you know, so they're not bored, they've got an activity partner, they're great. And as long as you go along with that, they're happy. But they're still
they are happy. I mean, they think they're happy, but they're not.
They're not. They think they're happy. They're never happy. They're always going to have those huge emotional fluctuations. You know, they'd be great on a high, and the next thing you know, they're upset about something and flying off the handle. They're very easily stressed. It's hard to be around, put it that way, because it's a very stressful environment, very toxic.
Wow. I think, yeah, it's like what you're saying is an eye opener. So I trust that some people were listening and like, yeah. So
it's a touch.
Thing,
I mean, there's so much more, but it's a touch on it. Yeah.
Anyway, but it was a hard topic, but still, you know, enjoyable. And, you know, I learned so many things from you, and I trust the viewers also are. Just before we go, you have a gift for the viewers. Would you like to tell them something that will really, I trust, help them?
Yeah. So I offer a free coaching session, and you can find me on my website. There's all kinds of information there on all these topics. I also deal with betrayal trauma. So that's a lot of that there too that we didn't get to talk about today. But yeah, coaching session, and look over my website, and that's where you can find me. I'm on Instagram too, and I have a Facebook page. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Patricia.
The time, and I trust that you know, people will find all this information helpful, and then you will have the link to go to the website and to access the gift. And I wish you a nice day, because you're just starting.
Yes, thank you very much. And I wish you a great sleep after your long day.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Bye.
Bye-bye.